Who owns a knit tie?
I do have a knit tie.
Why do you? Oh my god, dude!
It was a gift though. It was. I didn't purchase it. It was a gift.
I'm gonna need to see it later.
Okay.
I need proof. I need proof that actually exists in the world.
Hey everyone, welcome to the First Ones to Die. This is our Bookcast. This is our second ever Bookcast. Me and Alex, we talk about a book that we chose from Book of the Month, and we talk about it. We discuss it. We talk about all the themes. We talk about the plot. We talk about what we liked, what we didn't like. And first off, before we get into our book, how are you doing, Alex?
I am doing okay. Got a new job, so excited about that. But a little bittersweet because I'm saying goodbye to everybody. But it's a good time to move on. How about you? How are you doing this week?
I'm doing good. I know we talked a little bit beforehand, but also got a new job, and we were talking about how we're both in similar boats, where we're leaving our old one. We like the people and everything.
Starting new chapters.
We're on to new chapters. Well, what is the book, Alex, that we are talking about today?
It is Vladimir by Julia May Jonas. Sorry, Julia May Jonas.
Yes.
I took my cover off because I read it at work.
Vladimir. And this is a debut novel. So this is her first ever book.
Oh, was it a debut? I didn't know it was a debut novel.
It is. It is. It's basically about, and let me pull up the official description. Okay, I should have been more prepared here, but here we go. We're going to do this on the fly.
I have it.
Oh, do you have it? Okay,
yeah.
By all means.
Oh, here. A provocative, razor sharp and timely debut novel about a beloved English professor facing a slew of accusations against her professor husband by former students, a situation that becomes more complicated when she herself developed an obsession of her own. Over my words a little bit there, but
we got the point.
Hopefully. So off the bat, what did you think of the book?
So in starting out the book, I feel like I knew kind of what it was about, especially from the cover. I knew it was going to be some scandal. I knew there was going to be, some provocative stuff in here. And it pretty much met, I would say, my expectations throughout the book. And I was pleased with the reading / consuming experience overall. And I thought about it the next day as well, which is a good sign for me in books and media in general. If I think about something after I read or watch it, then it has some sort of effect on me, which is good in my book. So I enjoyed it overall. There are some parts where I'm like, what now? Why would this happen? And so forth. But we'll get to that a little bit later, I guess. Alex, what did you think?
I was actually a little disappointed going into it. It is provocative, I will say that, but given the cover, I was kind of expecting more spice to it. A little more bland. And also there are just certain parts, not necessarily with the story itself, but the way she works descriptions in the story and things like that kind of bother me. Not the story itself, but the words she uses to describe something. Some of those things, not offensively, I just didn't like how the way she described it, kind of personally. Overall, it wasn't too bad of a book. I think her writing was well done. She made it clear what she wanted to present as a plot and story. I just was not honestly a fan. It was not something I found myself enjoying too much. So it was more along the lines of that I think this really wasn't a book for me. I did enjoy that it was a fast read. It was very easy to comprehend, and it had a steady pace too. So those were some good things about the book.
Yeah, I think the beginning and some of the middle got me the most. I liked those portions the most. The end,
It kind of fell off.
a little bit.
Okay.
I think so. In kind of like reflecting about it a little bit. Maybe a little rushed. There were some things that weren't really like resolved. Like where did, and I guess we're
Let's just
not,
jump into
we're
spoilers.
just going into spoilers. um so spoiler warning in case you haven't read the book, we will talk about spoilers. The very end, where did Vladimir, what happened to Vladimir after he
Right?
rescued,
He just
yeah, after he rescued, and by the way, the narrator in the book, she doesn't have a name.
no, they never. That's another thing that bothered me. Like people would address her, but they never say her name, and it's always just like, well, why? Why would you? I guess they wanted you to put yourself in her shoes,
Mm,
but it just felt like, what do I call this character?
right. I kept thinking it was about like midway through the book. I'm like, okay, and I was taking notes. I'm like, wait, what is the narrator's name? Did they say her name already? Did I miss it? Or does she intentionally not have a name?
I think she probably intentionally did that so it's easier for you to like put yourself in the character's shoes.
Mm-hmm.
It was also that I didn't, from the way that like the novel presented itself a little bit more at the beginning, I expected her to be much younger than they initially ended up having her be, which is I believe in her 50s almost, right?
58, I think.
Yeah.
And then
So
her husband is 62 or 63, something like
yeah.
that.
So I ended up being like, oh, these people are like adults.
Right.
So it was a little
So in
like
other words, you're saying too old to be making these dumb decisions.
a little bit like you have a kid too. She does have a daughter who's like our age, and
Mm-hmm.
I'm like, okay, so like maybe you should have had your dumb situations before the kid, and now the kid's making its own dumb decisions. So clearly, you didn't teach your kid anything, and you didn't learn anything.
Yeah.
Um, and it's a little old, like because another part of the novel or another part of the book that I got was like, oh, it's a family dynamic trying to figure out family situations. But it's like y'all are quite old. These feel like situations you should have figured out a few years back, at least in like when I don't know. It just felt like I was a little surprised by the age range, and I was like, this feels like they're trying to show, oh, even in your older years, yes, you can still be very sexually active, and like you can still be dumb when it comes to relationships and kind of obsessions, where she creates, the obsession with Vladimir. But then it's also like, well, this gives me no hope for when I get older. Thought some wisdom would come to me, but clearly not.
And I think it was interesting how the author described the main character, the narrator, and her husband, in that they were, in their mid 50s or late 50s, early 60s. But from their description, I thought of them as they were described as like somewhat attractive from the description that I read in the book. And on the flip side of that, the narrator, she just had so many insecurities, not only about herself, but about herself in relation to everyone around her. And do you think that this main character or anyone around her, her husband or whoever, do you think this is how the author is trying to portray a midlife crisis?
I think so. I mean, because a lot of midlife crisis is just kind of being faced kind of with your own mortality or insecurities. Even I thought more so midlife crisis had to do with facing your your mortality, if you had my mortality, your mortality of the situation of life, and that like you are past this age of where you can do foolish things and be like, oh, you're young and you're learning. That certain age when you do foolish things, as I had just presented, was kind of like, oh, like come on, you should have, made those foolish decisions before. And I understand some people couldn't, like due to my past, I couldn't make the foolish decisions a teenager did, and sometimes I make stupid decisions now, which I is completely on the path of healing, going through what you've gone through your past. But she sounds like she's had a relatively normal life, and she should have had quite a normal upbringing even for her kid. um I also didn't like the way she describes or the character, the way she would say like how she liked older men. Like, you are an older woman, so your older men would be like 80s or like 70s.
And well, even I know when they were, or when she was describing her backstory, she was saying that she had affairs with, uh, or I guess you can call it an affair, with older men when she was in college. So it's basically like repeating the cycle. Like, she has a relationship with an older man while she's in college, and then her husband has a relationship with younger women when they're in college. And I think that is part of the reason why, to me, it doesn't seem like she was very like she didn't hold it against him as much as one probably should when when their husband or partner is having an affair, because she put herself in that situation from when she was younger.
I think well, no, they do talk about having an open marriage in the book. They're like, oh yeah, they'll sleep with whoever they choose, as long as they're safe. I think if anything, she was just annoyed that he made a scandal of it. Because when it's a situation like that, a scandal becomes part of the man and the wife. Like, it's not just about him, it becomes about her too. So she herself got forced to be, she seems like she would have been an outgoing person with the way she's described in the first chapter or so. Um, and she is now forced to be enclosed. She wasn't allowed to be out and everything, because now everybody was whispering about her and her husband, what was going on with the situation, whether it was true or not. So I think it more upset her that it affected her life in such a negative manner, that she now wasn't allowed to be the person she wanted to be or who she was. And this caused her to be in more, and which caused more self-reflection. And I guess possibly that where the insecurity started rising, is because she's forced to finally face them.
Mhm.
A lot of people use like sex or alcohol or other situations, or just even normal social events, to just be out and about, and to avoid inner thinking sometimes.
Yeah. And even though they did have an open marriage and they had that agreement, and they were both, contractually uh, able
Probably.
to to kind of, mess around with other people, their marriage was still very unhealthy.
It was.
It it didn't. They were not, you know, pleased at the sight of each other very often. And when they would, have those touching interactions, it would soon be followed by something that was very volatile and sketchy and non-communicative.
This is a problem that I have with a lot of heteronormative books and shows and like movies. They always have that in those type of relationships. Like, the husband and the wife can barely stand to be around each other. And I never understood that in like TV shows and things like that. Like, you hate your spouse. They're like, oh yeah, I love them and I'll die for them. But also the sight of them, I just recoil and it's repulsive. And this book kind of had that same feel to it, where it was like, then why? Why stay in the marriage then? And a lot of people have given me that, like, oh, divorce isn't always the best option. And I understand, because I recently had a friend whose parents went to divorce, and it did affect her greatly. I was like, I forget, because when my parents divorced when I was younger, it was a good thing. Their marriage I saw wasn't fit. I forget that some people don't see that with their parents' marriage. They're not faced with that reality. And I kind of felt that way. They were very docile and sweet when their daughter had been more around. And I thought that was interesting too. It played into that whole stigma or trope, or however you want to call it, that straight couples tend to hate each other when they're married, and then but behave near the children. And then when they get divorced, the children are like, what happened? So I never understood why that's such a popular, I guess, trope, stereotype, whatever you want to call it, for like heteronormative books. It just feels kind of weird. I never understood that.
Yeah. Uh,
Uh,
well, in kind of referencing what I had mentioned earlier about like Vladimir, his storyline just wasting a little bit at the very end. Another character who I thought was going to play a little bit more of a role in the story, Edwina, one of her students, the one who she wrote the recommendation letter for, and all of a sudden just ghosted her. I thought she was going to play a lot more into the story, but she kind of just came
Honestly, I
back.
don't remember her.
She was the one that was like, when she heard about the scandal and she heard about, or when the I don't know what to call the narrator, when the
Yeah,
narrator
narrator.
told her class, he's my husband and blah blah blah, this is the thing. She's the one that said, this is a white girl thing, this wouldn't happen to me. I don't know if you remember her at all, but
I think I vaguely remember her. I think she played such an insignificant role. She was kind of more there as just a rile up character, I guess, like to poke the bear.
mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
And so I guess I didn't pay much mind to her.
What did you think about the character of Vladimir, whom the book is named after?
I thought he would have a bigger role to play.
Mm.
He was more of an obsession for her than anything. He wasn't really part of the book. What she perceived him to be and who she wanted him to be for her own escape played a very big part. But who he was as an actual character, I found wasn't as important to the role in the book than, what was presented with the cover and even the title name. I thought he would be a very powerful force within the book, but it was really just the power of her mind creating this whole thing for it. What about you? Did you like Vladimir?
I thought he was a likable enough character. I really liked how he was described in the beginning of the book. He wasn't flawless. And I think sometimes novels do the thing where the character who is on the opposite side of the point of view of the main character, or the character who is the eye of affection, of the person who you're seeing the point of view from. They often make that character perfect with no flaws. But I appreciated that, him and his wife had some, marital problems, and there are potentially times when, they say something inappropriate to one another. But he was still likable enough in the sense that you were like, why are you trying to go after this dude? So I appreciated him in that sense. Once we got to the very end, though, I'm like, where are your critical thinking skills? Because when they went to the cabin at the very end and she tied him up and damn near killed the man,
I
possibly.
know. Never go into the woods with a white woman who is having midlife crisis. That will only end as it has been seen in every like horror film and now even romantic books or provocative books. You end up tied to a chair with a knife around near your throat.
Exactly. And then he just shrugged it off like, oh, okay, yeah, I guess. Yeah. And then he's like, yeah, I knew that this is why you brought me over here, but it's all right. It's okay. I'll leave now, I guess.
Yeah, I found that ridiculous when he was like, "Oh yeah, I know this is what you need to go through." Like, no, that is such a. That's why I thought for a second I was like, "Is this like an imagination of hers? Like, how okay is this guy to like almost getting murdered that he's just like, meh, it happens. This is my day to day."
Yeah.
It's funny you should mention the description of him at the beginning. That's one of the things I wasn't a fan of. Not necessarily his personality. I agree. I like that he was just imperfect. He was awkward. I didn't like how she physically described him, and I actually highlighted he wore a knit tie. I've never seen anybody wear a knit tie.
I,
Who owns a knit tie?
I do have a knit tie.
Why do you? Oh my god, dude!
It was a gift though. It was I didn't purchase it. It was a gift.
I'm gonna need to see it later.
Okay, okay.
We're gonna. I need proof. I need proof that that actually exists in the world. Um, and then like well cut pants and the good quality leather boots with thick white soles. That man is standing in front of you. How do you know what color his soles are? And what is with this thick leather, good quality leather boots with thick white sole? Like also, you guys are professors. I know for a fact, teachers, professors, you don't make as much money as you're trying to claim. Those are not real leather shoes. Do not try to come at me with good quality leather. Mm-mm. It was like that,
Maybe it
like
was his wife's money. Oh, but
maybe,
she's in the education.
yeah. All of them were in the education. It was just like little things like that where she just like described it too much to the detail, and I was just like, why do you have to do that? The character wouldn't know what's the sole the sole color was of the
Right,
shoes. And
right.
it was just like, I understand what you're doing, you're trying to just paint a very descriptive picture, but then there's too descriptive where it's like I almost feel like she's like looking at the bottom of her shoes like, can I see your heel real quick? Oh yeah, that's good quality. Those were cobblered well. So, but that was like my personal issue with it. It was, I agree. I like that he was awkward. He fumbled when he had like the wine in his hand and he was trying to come through the door. That was a very realistic feel where it wasn't the perfect entrance. It was what made him like less the situation less tense too.
Right, right. There was one part in the novel where our narrator is writing. We should give her a name. Let's call her Jane. And Jane is she's writing her book. That's a theme or an aspect throughout the novel is she is writing this book and she gets inspiration or she's rejuvenated essentially and inspired to continue to write her book because of this newfound lust or relationship that she has with Vladimir. And at one point in the book, she describes how she first starts writing after she has this like infatuation, after she has this infatuation with Vladimir. And she describes the feeling of writing as almost orgasmic. And Alex, as a writer,
No. No, I read that and
did
I
you
got
did you did you relate at all to the maybe not like orgasmic, but like the euphoric feeling that you might get when you start writing or when you're continuing to write or something like that? You don't need to go into like great detail, but you know,
actually from my at least writing, like you feel good, but it's mainly you feel tired because when you're trying to write, you're trying to really connect and show and kind of use trying to put yourself in the character's situation and all that like emotion that they're going through. I usually feel very tired. I don't actually feel always the best because sometimes I'm putting my character through a really horrible situation. And I'm like, I want better for my character, but I'm like, I know they need to go through this. So like sometimes I'm really sad, like, it's okay. You I know the ending. You'll be okay. I would never actually say there are some days that it's like it's real good and you feel like really powerful in a way because you're like, yes, I've gotten so much out. I feel like I made real progress, but I would never call it maybe euphoric, at least not until I think I'm at the end goal or I feel like the final copy has been made. Because you're always constantly thinking about what's right, what's wrong, what do I need to fix? Did I actually like this? There's like a constant thinking and going on with it. I don't think there's really euphoric sense to it until you're feeling that the final copy is done. At
mm,
the start, you're kind of like jittery. You're like, oh, I got this idea. Oh, I can do it. I can do it. And it's this rush of energy. And then you're constantly just in lots of like various emotions from sad to excited. So I wouldn't necessarily orgasmic. I would definitely just be like, I'm tired. because I want so much for this character that I'm building, but I also know what needs to be done to this character, and it's not always great.
Yeah.
When she actually said that, you know what I thought about, and it was such a weird reference that popped into my head. Do you remember that movie with Diane Keaton? Is it Diane Keaton? Um, As Good as It Gets.
Yes. Yes.
There's that scene after she breaks up. Oh, what's his name?
In fact, I could be mistaken, but don't they reference that in this book?
Do they?
Possibly.
That
I don't
might be
know.
why
I might just be making
that
that up.
might why be came out, because there's a point after she breaks up with the main character, and then suddenly she's writing like intensely as she's like crying, and then she's like laughing hysterically as she's writing. And I think that's actually a really good representation of what a writer goes through. There are moments where I'm literally just straight up crying as I'm writing. And then my mom calls, she's like, "What's up?" I'm like, "Oh no, it's fine. I'm just writing a character sad part." I'm like, "What do you need? What's up?" Like, you can shut it down fairly quickly when you're out of it. I think that was more of a real representation where you'll just start crying and laughing, going through all these emotions. I wouldn't say
Right.
you really feel like one emotion, at least not for me.
Mm,
Um, I did think their love story was a little weird sometimes in the moments they were having, like when he's like, "Oh, I want to kiss you." Like that was I feel like if a person said that to me as we're about to kiss, I feel more awkward.
it would be a turn off.
Yeah, it'd be like breaking the moment, like we're having this intense eye contact. Just be like, can I kiss you or something? Not be like, I want to kiss you. Well, clearly the intense eye contact, the feeling of it's made very physically visible. And if it's not physically visible, then like just ask, can I kiss you? I feel like it's such a weird statement to say I want to kiss you is like leading to such an awkward situation.
Mm,
So I felt maybe that might have made it more realistic, was those little awkward moments of like breaking that moment in those like little moments. You know what I mean?
right,
Like
right.
that said any yeah, if that made any sense with the little moments. Was there did you have a favorite part, or was there a part like you were like, oh, this is ended up enjoying way more than I thought, or
Yeah, I'd say even though I wasn't the biggest fan of how it was, portrayed at the very end, I really like how it was described, or I didn't like the overall plot of the very end, but I did like how it was written and how it was portrayed. I was on the edge of my seat when she was drugging him and when he was getting tied up and everything. I was like, what is she doing? Why is she? I was on the edge of my seat. Granted, that wasn't my favorite part. My favorite part was probably, I'd have to say, the pool party when they're just hanging out and then she realizes, oh, I got the hots for this man. So that was probably my favorite part of the book.
I think my favorite part was nearing actually I think I was just like I'm like, oh, that actually is the end. With the fire, I kind of I it sounds like awful, but I kind of like that it wasn't just like he walked away, she ended up resolution everything being resolved and everything like that. There was this major fire, and she was scarred, her husband was scarred, and this kind of gave a physical representation of the damage that was done with the
Mm-hmm.
scandal, with Vladimir, with all this. And
Because
it was just
if she wouldn't have done all of that, if she wouldn't have gone to that cabin, none of that would have happened.
yeah, so it was like not only that, it was like it felt like a good way to physically represent everything that went through in the scarring that they'll be facing for their whole lives,
Mm-hmm.
because of everything they went through. And I do like when something emotional happens and there's almost like a physical scar representation when
Mm-hmm.
they do that. So I actually really enjoyed that. But I did enjoy the pool scene. It felt like in my head there was like a slow moment montage going on. Like I had that playing in my head like that, which I did enjoy quite a bit. But yeah, I was nearing the ending with the fire. That was like the thing I felt best connected to.
Right. And not only did she have physical scars on her body, but she also lost her book as well that she was writing, which in this day and age, this book seems to take place in present day. why didn't she use Google Drive or
I
iCloud?
was thinking that, and I'm like, Google Docs, man. I use that so I can write at work to here, not lose stuff, and then when I'm ready, I'll transport it to another thing. But like, also just like Microsoft Word, you
Exactly.
can do recovery.
Right. And now she's like, I physically after every session, I download all of my stuff to a thumb drive or something like that. I'm like, you don't even have to do that. You're still behind.
Yeah, and also like, do you know how easy it is to lose a thumb drive?
Right.
I've lost God knows how many. Yeah, no, that's like writing and thumb drives. No, and it's a thumb drive too, so it's not even like a one of the big ones, like a compact disc.
Mm-hmm.
Compact disc. Wow, I went
Oh,
far back.
floppy disk.
Wow, yeah, floppy disk. It's not like a floppy disk. Those you could get lost, but they were usually just in the crevice of things. You can always find a floppy disk. It was just there. It
Right.
wasn't like an external drive where it was something a little bit thicker and like you could less lose out of. You're less likely to lose, but a thumb drive is so like you put it down, it's gone.
Mm-hmm.
Also, why did you bring the thumb drive to the cabin too? That was. I don't feel like you were gonna get much writing done there.
Dumb decisions were made all throughout this book.
Honestly, yeah, yeah. Sticking with her husband was one of them. Obsessing over a guy 30 years younger than you. I think they made him like 30 years younger than her too.
Yeah, he was like in his or he was like in his late 30s, I think. So like 20 years younger.
All right, 20 years ago. That's
Yeah.
less weird than 30, but still weird for me.
Right.
Um, I
Uh,
also thought the daughter would play a bigger role. She kind of
yeah.
seemed to like pop in and out. She wasn't really as much of a steady character as I anticipated for her to be.
Right, right.
I think her name was like Florence or something. No,
Yeah.
Sid.
Yeah, Sid.
There's another character named Florence.
I didn't see exactly because she had her, was it her girlfriend
Mhm.
who didn't really play. I didn't know what the role of the girlfriend was because she had all of this relationship drama with her girlfriend. Like they got in a fight or something. So that's why she came back home. And then the girlfriend took her back or something, which I thought they had broken up, but then all of a sudden they were together again and happy.
Yeah, it was presented that way that she had broken up with her like living girlfriend and that she was almost moving back in the midst of this, and this would play a bigger part. But it seemed like it was just a tiff, and then the girlfriend came back. Like it took a
Right.
day maybe to work things out, and then they went back. So it kind of felt like, yeah, that was like more of a tiff than like a breakup. And yeah, at the beginning when she first came home, it presented that she was moving back in with them almost,
Mm-hmm.
or at least that's what I was anticipating.
Right, right.
No, I was surprised by that.
Yeah.
Um, Overall, what did you think of the book? Like, did you?
Overall, I was on board for, I would say, the first 80 75 80% of it. I was really into it for that amount of time. And then the end, it kind of lost me a little bit. But overall, I'd say I'd have a fair um, enjoyment of this book. Like we mentioned in this podcast, there were a few things to critique naturally with any work, but I thought it was I haven't really dived into this genre of books like the scandal, like we got someone who's cheating and with a
Listen,
younger person. I haven't really dived into this type of fiction before.
when we talked about The Witcher, I mentioned that I'm like, yeah, I figured out you didn't like fantasy when I was trying to buy you a Christmas book, and I was like, he never talks about fantasy books. He has a certain, so I'm not surprised you like the more suspenseful part at the end, where it's
Mhm.
like he's tied up, he's about to be murdered. That seems to be where your area is, where it's suspense and thriller and like solving a murder, not being part of the murder.
I am what you might call a thriller hoe. I like a good thriller. So
It's okay. I'm on Alfredo. I like my pasta.
Oh,
My mom
Fred.
told me. My mom told me not to call myself that. She's like, "Don't call yourself a hoe." I'm like, "I'm Alfredo." Anyway, yes, I did.
Anyway,
I did
uh,
see when you mentioned that. I'm like, oh, I noticed that that you would probably like that part the most too. I thought about that because just going based off remembering the whole thing from The Witcher, I was like, yeah, he doesn't like fantasy, and I'm like, oh, this is kind of the lead up before like the murder's committed. I was
right,
wondering how you
right.
would like be with that.
Hmm. Yeah. Overall, I might check out some of these. Uh, I'll look to see online people who've read this to see what they're suggesting to read next. Uh, so yeah, overall, I thought the writing was fantastic as well. I thought it was very descriptive. I'm curious to see if Julia May Jonas, if she has experience in the education system, in higher education, because this book definitely touches on a lot of the aspects of the college teaching experience. So I'm curious to see if she does have experience teaching or anything like that. I assume she does. That would be my first guess. So yeah. Alex, what did you think overall?
Um, I will
Even though
agree.
we kind of discussed it at the beginning, but I
Well,
guess
yeah,
final thoughts about the book.
for final thoughts after spoilers and everything. Um, like I said, I did have a problem when she was describing people's like clothing and like what they were wearing and the style. That was too much for me. She went a little too much into detail, but I will say she was very descriptive. I did like there were like no spelling errors. Everything was very grammatically correct. There was no misprints or anything like that. Which nowadays you'd be surprised how often that happens in books. So I was very appreciative of that.
I always mark it when I find a
Right?
misspelling or like a double. You have two words back to back or something like
Or
that.
you have like an extra period, or for some reason a random question mark pops. So like
Oh,
I'll appreciate that the great work of her editor, like did not miss a step with this book.
sure.
There I think this book was not what I had anticipated, but it ended up not. I didn't enjoy it too much. I did enjoy the kind of almost from a psychological view, almost the case study she presented herself as, with
Hmm.
the obsession with the environmental factors playing into that, how that grew, and almost how everybody around her seemed to be so understanding as she was kind of having this mini breakdown. So
Hmm.
I enjoyed it from like almost a psychological standpoint. I think I switched it from a provocative book to a
A
psychological
case
book.
study.
Yeah, so I kind of did a flip in there. So I will say I enjoyed it in that aspect, and I did like the ending. Like I said, with the physical burns and everything, kind of gave a final to what was going on, and the destruction of her book was like the ending of a book. It
Mhm.
felt real, and yeah, you're right. Vladimir kind of just disappeared. For I just hadn't thought about that. I was like very like, oh, it feels like the book's done. But you're right. Vladimir just poof. Um, I think I would probably read parts of this book again, but not read it fully and like give a very descriptive detail when recommending this book to somebody. But I wouldn't be like, hey, you need to read this book. I would be like, hey, I read this book. Here's like the details. Like, I think I would find somebody who definitely has an interest in this style of book.
Okay. Not have them go in blind. Give
Yeah.
a little taste of
Yeah.
what they'll
Wouldn't
expect.
recommend it to you and Jerome, honestly. I'd probably be like, oh hey, like this is like the ending style's you, but like the beginning part's a little like a run you gotta get to. But I think you'll like the ending style. I think I would describe it that way for you. Jerome, probably not. And then yeah, I don't see him reading that.
Awesome. Well, that is our second ever bookcast. Thank you to whoever is joining us today. You can follow us at The First Ones to Die on Twitter, Instagram, TikTok, YouTube. You can also email us, the first ones to die at gmail.com. We have our podcast content. You can follow us on whatever podcast platform you listen to. Search The First Ones to Die. And you can check out some more of our YouTube content as well here. We'll be doing more bookcasts in the future, I'm sure of it. And we also post our podcast, the video version of our podcast on our YouTube pages, on our YouTube page as well, and more. So be tuned in to our YouTube content. And Alex, where can people find you at?
You can find me at Alex and Nobody on Instagram and on TikTok. What about you, Jonathan?
Nice. You can follow me at Jonathan Keys on Twitter, Instagram, wherever you please. And next up on our podcast, we're talking about Euphoria, season 2. So that's going to be exciting. Lots of drama, lots of scandal.
So much.
And we'll see you for our next bookcast, whenever that will be. We haven't decided.
We'll pop up. We
Yes.
always pop up.
Exactly. So until next time, see ya.